also argued that the death penalty brings closure to the family of victims and that it is biblically supported through the Old Testament pronouncements on the equivalence of an eye for an eye. Occasionally, too, persons register their resentment for murder by arguing that the state should not be called upon to bear the economic cost of keeping vicious murderers alive. Against the background of Jamaica's shockingly high murder rate, some persons also maintain that even if we are to abolish the death penalty, the time is not right to do so. For these persons, abolition in the midst of high criminality and wanton disrespect for life would amount to surrender by the state to the forces of evil. Before we proceed, smash the like button to pieces, leave a comment, please share the life out of this video, feel free to subscribe for more content, remember to turn on your notification so as to never miss another video.
Let's do it.
Jamaica last carried out the sentence for death in 1988 on an executive warrant signed by the Attorney General Oswald Harding, QC, OJ. Since that time, Harding, who later became the Dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Technology in Jamaica, has been one of the strongest critics of the death penalty in Jamaica. Capital punishment is a legal penalty in Jamaica. Currently, the only crime punishable by death is aggravated murder. The method of execution is hanging. The last person executed in Jamaica was Nathan Foster, who was convicted of murder and hanged in 1988. The Jamaican Parliament had placed a moratorium on the death penalty until 2009 when it was lifted. Since 2009, capital punishment is legal and executions in Jamaica could resume. However, there have been no executions since. It was estimated in 2012 that there were 7 or 8 inmates in Jamaica currently under the death sentence. The decision over the last 23 years by the United Kingdom-based Privy Council, Jamaica's final appellate court, have not only removed the noose from the necks of almost 200 inmates on death row, but have significantly reduced the imposition of the death sentences. Although Jamaica has retained the death penalty, it is not being carried out. The last hanging took place in February 1988. There is now 1 person on death row, and legal experts are positive that hanging will not be resumed in Jamaica because of the Privy Council's ruling in the murder case and the amendments to Jamaican laws. The case that drastically wiped out the death row population was the United Kingdom Privy Council ruling in 1993 in the Jamaica case of Pratt and Morgan. There were 190 inmates on death row at the time, and in keeping with the Privy Council's guideline, in that case, many of the death sentences were commuted to life. The Privy Council ruled then that it was inhumane and degrading to hang an inmate who had been on death row for more than 5 years. The latest Privy Council decision, by which the courts now have to be guided and which has been described by defense lawyers as the final nail in the coffin, is the case of Daniel Dick Trinningham from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is commonly referred to as the Trinningham case. The Privy Council ruled that for a murder case to attract the death penalty, there must be features of the manner in which the offense was committed that makes the case the most extreme and exceptional, the worst of the worst, or the rarest of the rare. It said further that in considering whether a case fell into that category, the judge should compare it with other murders and not with ordinary civilized behavior. The determination that there must be no reasonable prospect of reform of the offender and that the object of punishment could not be achieved by any means other than the ultimate sentence of death is the other principle that the Privy Council says is to be considered. The Privy Council has ruled that before the court imposes a death sentence, it must be satisfied that those 2 criteria have been fulfilled. In addition, the prosecution has to give formal notice to the defense and the court before the start of the trial that it intends to apply for the death penalty if the accused is convicted. The Trinningham case in effect has given a death sentence itself to the implementation of the death penalty, says Paula Llewellyn, Director of Public Prosecutions in Jamaica. Her comments came after the National Security Minister Robert Montague last month said his ministry was taking steps to determine whether hanging could be resumed in Jamaica, touching off a new debate on the death penalty. According to Amnesty International submission in relation to Human Rights Council Universal Periodic Review of Jamaica, there were 4 people on death row at the end of 2009. There were 4 death sentences and no execution in 2010. By December 7, 2011, there had been no reports of execution in 2011, bringing the total number of persons under the death sentence to 8. Amnesty International reports that there are at least 7 persons known to be under sentence of death by the end of 2011. So under Jamaican law, the death penalty can only be assigned to aggravated murder cases involving any one of the following. So murder of any member of the security forces, any member of the judiciary, any judicial officer, witness, jury members, or other civil servants may be punished by death. Murder for hire, murder in the course of furtherance of another offense such as a robbery, rape or arson, or murder committed to further an act aimed at undermining the public peace and order is punishable by death. Double murders or repeat murderers are also punishable by death. And it says, does the country have the mandatory death penalty? No. The Judicial Committee of the Privy Council struck down the mandatory death penalty in 2004, and the current penal code no longer provides for the mandatory death penalty, and categories of offenders that are excluded from facing a death sentence: individual below age 18 at the time of the crime. Jamaica is a party to the ACHR and is obligated not to execute people who were under the age of 18 at the time that the crime was committed. Pregnant women. The sentence of death cannot be pronounced on a pregnant woman. The intellectually disabled. A person suffering from abnormality of mind due to a condition of arrested or retarded development or any inherent cause induced by disease or injury so as to diminish mental responsibility cannot be convicted of capital murder. The mentally ill. A person suffering from abnormality of mind due to conditions same that I mentioned earlier for the intellectual disabled cannot be sentenced to death. The elderly. Jamaica is a party to the ACHR and is obligated not to execute the elderly.
Beat and teach, so beat and teach, so beat and teach, 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 beat and teach.
Abolitionists argue that the death penalty promotes retribution, which is a base sentiment and not justice. They further suggest a cruel, inhumane, barbaric, and uncivilized form of state action which is unjustifiable in modern society. For the abolitionists as well, biblical authority within the New Testament points to the role of the other cheek in promoting social interaction, and in any case they suggest passing reference to the lex talionis from ancient times should not be determinative of legal perspectives in the 21st century Jamaica. Punishment, it is said, must serve to deter, but it should also have a redemptive function. It should provide even the most vicious criminals with the opportunity of rehabilitation. This function is utterly defeated if society, with our implicit consent, executes some of those who violate social norms. When it is recalled, too, that most persons vulnerable to execution have faced poor oppressed circumstances from birth, the death penalty may be viewed as society's final infliction of unfairness upon persons whom we should be working to redeem. Secondly, abolitionists have a strong case based on the possibility of mistake in the death penalty cases. Even in societies with sophisticated police investigative techniques, mistakes are made, and mistakes are quite likely in murder cases where social revulsion is strong. We feel beleaguered and we want to see justice done on behalf of the victims. For the foregoing reasons, it is not surprising that a significant majority of Jamaicans continues to support the death penalty, and this majority support in the context of democratic decision making adds another consideration in favor of retaining the punishment. The people want it, so the policymakers are pressed to keep it. The lesson emerges quite clearly from parliamentary debates on the subject from the 1970s through to 2008 conscience vote on the subject to the present. Thank you for watching the video. Drop a like and a comment down below and consider subscribing if you haven't done so as yet. Until next time, walk good.